Hello, everyone, and welcome in to another episode of the RTI Recruiting Podcast. I am Nathaniel Rutherford, the managing editor of RockyTopInsider.com, joined again by our special guests at VR2 of the Sports Illustrated Network. I'm with Brandon Martin. No, Matt Ray. He's got to take care of some business otherwise right now, but it's again, Brandon. We're back here for the second podcast in like 3 days because Tennessee is just absolutely just on fire on the recruiting show right now. They're not just getting commits from guys with like 3 stars. That's not a bad thing. Getting commits from 3 stars is not bad. Tennessee has some guys in this class who I think are some good 3-star prospects who could eventually move up to 4-star ranking by the time this class is over. But Tennessee has been killing it. We talked on Sunday when Tennessee got the commitment from 5-star Dillon Brooks. Well, since we all last spoke, Brandon, we talked about that this may not be over with, to kind of keep an eye out on maybe some more guys jumping in the boat soon. Well, we got 2 more guys jumping the boat. Kamara Wilcoxson, 4-star defensive back who was committed to Florida twice, committed to Tennessee on Monday, and then just a few hours ago, we're recording this on a Tuesday afternoon, Tennessee got another 4-star to commit in Julian, a 4-star wideout, who we were talking before we hit record here. We could see maybe even playing tight end in college. Just kind of depends on what Tennessee does at the tight end position and how Nixon develops as a player and what his body does between now and when he gets on campus. But Brandon, I want to break down both Nixon and Wilcoxson because I think those guys are really good athletes, really good players. But I want to talk about just what Tennessee's doing right now. This isn't, we talked about last podcast, Ohio State had a run, North Carolina had a run. Those are 2 programs that are right there in the top of the recruiting rankings right now. Tennessee's gone on a run to the point where they're now number 5 in the country on both 2R7 Sports and Rivals. And obviously it's very early, and one reason Tennessee is that high is because they have now 13 commits, which is one of the top numbers in the country right now. But it's not just because they're bloating up with numbers. Tennessee now has 4 guys rated as 4 stars or better, and Dillon Brooks, obviously the crown jewel, at 5 stars. What's impressed me most, Brandon, is they've been doing this without the benefit of having visits. Tennessee, no one can have anybody on campus right now. Tennessee hasn't been able to get these guys on campus since at the latest, I guess earliest, how you want to word it, was like in early March was the last time Tennessee had guys on campus. The last recruit to really visit Tennessee was Caden Salter, who we'll talk about a little later. He came and visited on Tennessee's second day of spring practice, which was their last day of practice. So I think it's highly impressive, Brandon, that they're able to get some of these guys they're getting because they're beating out Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, Florida, legitimately beating those teams out for these guys. And they're doing it without having these guys be on campus, at least for the last couple months, if in some of these guys even longer, they haven't been on campus.
Well, the advantage they've had in this is that, especially for guys like Dillon Brooks and Kamar Wilcoxon, these are guys that Tennessee has wanted for a long time, and they have been recruiting them for a long time. Tennessee's not been able to have Dillon Brooks on campus in this last little stretch, but Dillon Brooks has stayed at Tennessee. Matt has talked several times about this. Every time a dead period ended, the first place Brooks went was UT. So he's been in Knoxville. He's been on campus. Kamar has been on campus. These are 2 guys they have recruited for a long time. And they've pushed really hard for Nixon as well. They've been involved there. I also think that Nixon's a guy, and we talked about this about a month ago, like, when's he going to pop? Mm-hmm. We sort of I expected him to commit before he has. So we've been watching him for a while. So Brooks is a guy we knew Tennessee was really, really interested in. We knew he had interest in Tennessee. We weren't sure if it was going to solidify, if they were going to be able to land him or not. We've kind of felt like Wilcoxson and Nixon were both pretty heavy Tennessee leans for a while. These are guys Tennessee's been involved with for a long time, even if they haven't been able to have them on campus. These guys have been on campus before.
Yeah.
I think that's important. This is where you talk about how did you recruit guys as juniors? How did you recruit guys as underclassmen? How good are you at identifying talent on the board early before it gets completely developed? And that's something Tennessee staff is reaping the benefits of right now because, no, they've not been able to have guys on campus during this pandemic, but because they identified these guys early, saw what they were, they've had them on campus before, and that's given them an advantage now. So it's not like they don't know what campus is; they're unfamiliar with it.
That's a good point. Like you said, Brooks has been on campus, I don't know how many times. And I think as Matt pointed out in the last podcast, he's a guy that every time there was a break, every time there was a dead period, that first week after the dead period lifted, Brooks was almost always on campus at Tennessee. He elected to come to Tennessee rather than going to, he came to Tennessee rather than going to the Iron Bowl. He came to see Tennessee play Vanderbilt in
the rain,
poor weather conditions over going to the Iron Bowl. That spoke volumes at the time, and now you see him obviously part of this class. Let's get a little more specific here about the two guys who have committed since Brooks, and obviously we'll have a couple other things to talk about before we close out the podcast too. Wilcoxson. Brandon, I watch his film, and I know you do a lot of the film analysis stuff for VR2. I watched his film, and man, his ball skills, his versatility, it's outstanding to me. I know he's put it on Twitter that he's going to play cornerback, and I imagine Tennessee, it's probably told him they'd like for him to play cornerback for them. But he to me is a safety body with the ball skills of a safety. The guys you imagine like Eric Berry and whatnot who pick off passes and things like that. He's got the skills and the body of a safety in a cornerback, and there's a couple of things he can work on, getting his back pedal sped up and things like that, but he moves really fluidly. He's very quick. He's about 6'1", 6'2". I mean, he's a big kid who moves really well. I think, and he does not lack confidence. I think it was with you guys, he did an interview where he said that he feels like he's going to be the best cornerback on Tennessee's roster by the time he gets there, or maybe even is right now, technically. I can't remember the exact quote was, but that was with you all on VR2. He does not lack confidence, and he has a lot to be confident about. This kid is special. I don't know that he'll make a huge jump in recruiting rankings, but I do think he does move up a little bit more. He's already a bona fide 4-star across the board. I think he can move into the top 200 by the time it's all said and done. I love the potential he brings. He's going to fight for a starting job as a freshman, I think, because I think Tennessee's going to have at least one starting position up for grabs. I think you'll see at least one of Bryce Thompson and Alontae Taylor declare early. You could have both, and then you also have Sean Schamberger leaving as a senior, who's that star position. Tennessee's secondary is going to be pretty young in 2021, but it is going to be chock full of talent, obviously assuming all these guys stay committed. But you look at who they signed this past class with: Mordecai McDaniel, Keyshawn Lawrence. They have Tank McCullough still on campus, and a couple of the young guys like Warren Burrell. I mean, I really like what Wilcoxson brings. I think he is a very good athlete who brings a lot of versatility and size to Tennessee secondary.
I think the thing that jumped out to me when I was watching Wilcoxson on film is the versatility is there, the fluidity of an athlete's there. But I was struck by this is a smart football player. He's a very, very high IQ defensive back, whether you see him at safety, whether you see him at corner. I really like watching him play safety. I know he wants to play corner and is going to get a look at corner. I really like watching him play safety because he's one of those guys that has a high enough football IQ. He's playing head games with the quarterback, and he usually wins. He's one of those guys that he understands he's a good enough athlete to look like he's out of position. A guy that did this really famously in the NFL for a long time, and I'm not necessarily directly comparing these two. Don't think that, but there was something Ed Reed did really, really well for years and years with the Baltimore Ravens. Is Reed would look like he was out of position. He would bait quarterbacks. He would purposely put himself in a place that it looked like he shouldn't be, or he was beat, or he had made a mistake. But he was smart enough to know what he was showing the quarterback, and he would force that throw and then be ready to break on it, and understood his own athletic ability enough that he could get there and make that play. And I see some of that with Kamar. You see it on film. He baits quarterbacks into throws. He puts receivers where he wants them at times with the way he positions himself. They think they're getting what they want, and he's really just setting them up. And that shows up several times on film, and I really enjoy the intelligence of that. And I'm not saying he can't do that at corner, but I think you're losing a big part of his game, taking him away from safety right there where he's really good at that. But he can absolutely play corner. He's a lot like Keyshawn Lawrence in the fact that I think he can play. I think you can throw him anywhere in the secondary that you want, and he's going to be okay. Does he have the top end speed of a lot of the elite corners? No, not quite. But he's fast. He's fast enough to cover anybody you would want him to cover. Now, if he pulls a guy like a Henry Ruggs that just left Alabama, yeah, he's going to need safety help, but so does everybody else in the country. So I don't really have too many concerns about him playing corner from a speed standpoint. Technically, he needs to polish that up a little bit, work on his back pedal, loosen his hips up a little bit, but the ball skills are there. If he's playing corner, he's an outstanding tackler for a corner. He's a good tackler for a safety. I really like him more in that free safety spot, the traditional let him come back, let him play center field, let him play head games with the quarterback, eat up grass, and go get the ball. And I love watching him do that. I love watching him work there. He's a willing run defender. He's a very, very solid tackler. When you put on film, you don't see him landing those knockout hits a lot, but that's because he understands as a safety, I got to wrap this guy up. I just got to get him on the ground. That's the important thing, is you're the last line of defense. I have to put this guy on the ground. He's good at that. He's been playing against as good a competition as you're going to find in the country, playing at IMG Academy. He has been as well coached as you're going to get a high school prospect coming out of IMG Academy again. This is a guy who has pretty well been groomed to make an early impact when he gets to Knoxville.
Yeah, absolutely. He's. I think the comparison to Keyshawn Lawrence is very apt. I think both those guys bring a lot of versatility and a lot of really good playmaking ball skills. And Pruitt loves guys who are defenders who play on offense. That's the same thing we talked about. Dillon Brooks did it. I'm pretty sure Wilcoxson also played on offense. I could be wrong about that, but I know Dillon Brooks definitely did. I talked to his head coach, Coach Strain, down in Alabama, and you can see the interview on RockyTopInsider.com. They talked about another high school coach kind of calling him crazy for putting him at tight end. He's like, but then the coach told me he watched his film and said, well, no wonder you play him on offense. He's like, he can do anything he wants to in that field. So Pruitt Pruitt and this whole staff love guys who on defense have an offensive background and use that offensive background to enhance and strengthen their defensive skills. On the offensive side, Tennessee did pick up an offensive commit. We've been talking about a lot of big-time defensive commits for Tennessee. Tuesday, their latest one, 4-star Julian Nixon. Brandon, you said it earlier. We have been thinking he was going to commit for a while. We talked about it. I think it might have been a couple weeks ago in a podcast talking about since the beginning of April, and that's why I said a joke that said maybe it was an April Fool's joke because it was like April 1st when he started it. But he ever since April happened, he's been tweeting nonstop about Tennessee. If he's been tweeting, it's been about Tennessee. If it's a retweet or whatever it is, I think he had like one tweet in the span of like 15 tweets before he committed that wasn't about Tennessee. Everything else was about Tennessee, peer recruiting or anything else, and you're just wondering when's he gonna jump in the boat? Well, he finally did. He's the hat trick that Brian Niedermeyer was referencing to on Twitter. Nixon, to me, Brandon, I think he's a very intriguing prospect. He mentioned in an interview with you guys that they were selling him on a kind of be like a Jawan Jennings type of player, and I think you and I both would agree from reading your analysis of his film and what I saw in his film. I think it's pretty spot on. He plays very physically. I think he's got a little bit more broad shoulders than what Jennings does. I think he actually is built kind of like a tight end as far as the way his shoulders are and kind of how his body is. He's not going to wow you with his speed. He's fast enough to get by guys in high school. I'll be intrigued to see how it transitions to college. But this guy just goes up and he does whatever it takes to catch a ball. I mean, he is a legit jump ball threat. He is a big red zone target. He's a guy that does not go down on first contact. And as you said in your analysis, Brandon, he's a guy that plays some Wildcat quarterback for his high school too. And boy, howdy, I would not want to see him running after me. He's like, you think Jalen Hurd, 6'2", 6'3", 240? That's about what this kid is when he's playing as a running back. He's about that same size, and tackling Jalen Hurd was never fun. Tackling this kid, that's not fun either.
If you see Julian Nixon coming running at you as a defensive back in the open field, to quote Deion Sanders, you're going to have to make a business decision. This is a big dude. This is a big dude. He doesn't go down easy. I really like that you brought up that jump ball ability because you're talking, we talked when Tennessee signed Malachi Wideman on National Signing Day this year. Just throw it up, and he's going to go get. I don't care how many guys you have on him. I don't care who has position. He's going to jump higher. He's going to be the highest. He's going to be the guy at the top. Just throw it up and let him go get it. And I kind of feel the same way about Nixon. I mean, you're talking 6'4", 6'5", 230, strong kid, excellent leaper. good ball skills, high points the ball well, strong hands. So we talk about strong hands all the time, and I think people laugh a little bit or think we're, down this recruiting rabbit hole a little too far. But you're talking about a kid who's going to be able to go up at a weird angle and really stretch his arms out at an odd place. If he gets his hands on the ball, his hands are strong enough to squeeze it and hold it. Even if he can't get both hands on it, even if he can't get it back to his body, even if he falls to the ground and hits the ground, he can still hang on to that ball. And that's really something that Nixon excels at. And where that becomes so dangerous is on the sidelines and in the end zone, especially in the back of the end zone. Tennessee's red zone offense last year was, and there's not really a better way to say this, it was just god-awful. The red zone offense was terrible.
Yep.
You're talking about bringing in guys right now who are immediately going to make that red zone offense better. Immediately. You saw that, I think, when Tennessee went to get Malachi Wideman, when Tennessee went to get D. Beckwith. I think those were two guys who were highlighted and circled as, we got guys to throw it to in the red zone now. And I think you're seeing the same thing here with Nixon. This is a guy, you get inside the 20-yard line, especially when you get inside the 10-yard line, what do you do with him? He's 6'4", 6'5". He's big enough and strong enough that he could develop into a tight end for Tennessee, and you could line him up as I think he has a potential future as an inline tight end.
Mm-hmm.
He's also a guy you could flex out as a tight end away from the formation, or he could potentially play wide receiver in his collegiate career. But when you have a guy with that body and that skill set, you can use him in all three places. Inside the 10-yard line, that's a chess piece. You create your matchup. You're moving him around, you're lining him up, and you get him who you want him on. Either on a linebacker that can't run with him, on a safety who's not as quick as him, or a corner that can't jump with him. And even then, even if you go, okay, I'm going to double him because I know he's such a threat, I'm going to bracket cover him, he can still out-jump two guys. You can just throw the ball up, and he can go get it over two guys in good coverage. And that's such a weapon to have on an offense that needs it so badly. It's also really important to note, Nixon and Wilcoxson, both of these guys are like Brooks. They hit the ground and immediately started peer recruiting hard. You're not just talking about good players on the football field. You're not just talking about guys that fit into this system really well. You're talking about guys that look like they have bought in, jumped in. They're busy trying to bring other people to this program, and it seems like they may be done and shut down.
Yeah, Wilcoxson specifically said on Twitter that he's not taking any more visits. He's locked in, and Nixon seems like he's been very locked in for a while with Tennessee. You wonder, I mean, I guess the question is you wonder with Wilcoxson because of the way he did with Florida, but he seems very sold off of Florida now. I'll say that because of that director of player personnel subtweeting him, and then Wilcoxson ended up deleting this tweet, but he replied back and saying something like, "You really doing this? Like, really? Can't wait to see y'all later on. Can't wait to see y'all in the swamp, essentially," whatever he said, something like that. But he, I think it's safe to say, even though he grew up a Florida fan and that they're his dream school, something went wrong there with the way he was treated by the Gators, and I don't think he's going to have any love for Florida when he comes to Tennessee. Because I agree with you. I think he's pretty locked in. It would take kind of like what happened with Cade Mays. You look way back, it would take a catastrophic season and just a total mismanagement, I think, for him to jump out of the boat. Dillon Brooks, different situation. I think he is pretty sold on Tennessee, but I mean, he's a high 5-star guy out of Alabama. Alabama and Auburn, LSU, they're not going to give up on him just because he committed to Tennessee. We know for sure Auburn's not going to give up on him. And Tennessee and Auburn have gone head to head for numerous kids over the last few years and really the last decades or so, I guess. But Brandon, you're right. They've been peer recruiting, and that leads me to another point here of, do we see someone else here soon? Or are they done yet? I don't think he's going to jump in the boat because I don't think he's ready to announce yet. But Cody Brown has been a guy that all of these kids, Dillon Brooks, you've seen Kamara Wilcoxson and Julian Nixon, all of those guys have been really, he's the one I've seen them just hound the most, saying, "Hey man, when you coming? When you going to join? When you coming in?" Harrison Bailey has mentioned him. There's been multiple of Tennessee recruits who have mentioned that 4-star running back Cody Brown, who I think is easily one of the best running backs in this class. They've been jumping on him, wanting him to come in the boat. I don't think he's going to anytime soon. He's a guy who I don't think is ready to commit just yet. I think he kind of wants to let the process play out a little bit more. But where do you think Tennessee stands with him? Because that's a kid that, I mean, if you're talking about getting peer recruited, he's hearing from Tennessee kids about every minute of the day, it feels like, I'd imagine.
I think Tennessee is probably at the top of Cody Brown's list right now. I know Cody is wanting to wait a little while to commit. I'm not sure he's going to get to. Brooks has been really, really hard on him. Nixon has been hard on him. Kamara Wilcoxon has been hard on him. Those three get along. They're pretty close. Harrison Bailey has been wearing him out. Harrison Bailey has been wearing Cody Brown out for a while.
Harrison Bailey, he tweeted about it jokingly. He might deserve Recruiter of the Year. He's been doing a phenomenal job recruiting for that 2020 class and his 2021 class.
I mean, he needs a spot on the board at least. He deserves something there. But Harrison has been really involved there. He has been big with Brown. Tennessee has been heavily involved with Brown. One of the other reasons I wouldn't be stunned to see Brown go soon, I don't know if in the next day or two, anything like that, but one of the reasons I wouldn't be surprised to see Brown go soon is Brown's been to campus.
Yep.
Tennessee has been. He's like Wilcoxson. He's like Brooks. He's like Nixon. Tennessee has been really heavily involved here for a while. Brown has been a primary target for a while. They have really, really gone after him. They've made him a priority. They've had him on campus. He kind of fits the same mold of these other guys, and now a lot of his buddies that he fits that mold with are in his ear going, hey, when you coming? Hey, when you coming? Hey, pull the trigger. And I do think Cody Brown is going to wait until he gets to campus one more time. That's what I think would happen. Would I be shocked if Tennessee got him to commit before then? No. I think it'll take one more visit, but I'm not sure either. Another guy that you may want to watch in the next little bit, and we've mentioned him before. Recently, Trinity Bell cut his list down to, I believe, a top 5. Trinity Bell's a big athlete out of Alabama, 6'7", about 250, defensive end, tight end. Not really sure what he plays at the next level, not because some of these guys we talk about, well, I don't really know what he is at the next level. Well, it's not really because we're projecting potential. Some of these guys we go, I don't really know what he is at the next level because he's really good at 2 or 3 different things. And the teams you're looking at you're going, well, they have needs at 2 or 3 different things. It's like you said with Brooks, why would you play him at tight end? Well, when you put on the film and watch him on offense, you go, why wouldn't you play him at tight end? No one can cover him. Bell's kind of the same thing. He's big enough to be that 3-4 defensive end that Tennessee likes, and there's definitely a need there with so many seniors graduating in this class. He's also a really gifted tight end, and we know Tennessee has got a priority need there as well. I think they really need to take 2. Wouldn't be stunned if Nixon is one of those guys. Rock Taylor is a potential tight end, but he really wants to play wide receiver. Bell's tape at defensive end and at tight end is really good. He's good at both positions. I think that's going to be one to watch. And there are guys tweeting right now about 4 for 4 and not done yet. So they may not be finished yet. And I'm not sure who it would be. Bell is one that I know trimmed a list recently. Of course, we know Caden Salter's committing on the 10th. So there are a few guys, but I mean, you've got several guys you could go with here. There are several different players Tennessee has been recruiting hard that could fall into this group.
Yeah, I really like Trinity Bell's potential. 6'7", 250, 260, somewhere around there right now, heading into his senior season down in Albertville, Alabama. It'd be, again, another Alabama kid. We talked about that when Dillon Brooks committed. I mean, Tennessee has been hitting Alabama hard, and if he commits to Tennessee, that's 6 kids. It's 6 kids in the top 20, I think, of the state of Alabama that Tennessee's gotten commitments from, although I think Edwin White might not be in the top 20. I have to go back and double check. But that's still 6 kids that, out of the state of Alabama, several of them are highly rated kids out of Alabama who have offers from either Auburn or Alabama or both. Trinity Bell has definitely been pursued by Auburn for a while. They offered him a while ago. He's been at their campus several different times. But yeah, I think if you're looking for more names to kind of keep an eye on and see what happens, Bell is one. And like you said, we know Caden Salter is going to commit on May the 10th. Tennessee seems like they're in a very good spot with him. I think if I had to guess right now, if I had to put a crystal ball projection in or whatever, I would probably say Tennessee gets Salter. That's going to be interesting to me because Tennessee's still pursuing a few other quarterback targets in this class. Christian Vayu's one, although I do think Tennessee maybe is a little bit behind now on Christian Vayu, but they've been offering a few other kids at quarterback in this class. Tennessee's quarterback situation in general is going to be interesting because of JT Daniels and what happens with that. Harrison Bailey, can he take over as a true freshman without having a spring practices to kind of help hone his skills some at Tennessee? That's a whole different conversation for a whole different day, Brandon. We've talked about that, multiple times on the podcast anyway. But kind of closing this out, we talked about Cody Brown, that Tennessee's guys have all been on top on and trying to get him to come into the class as well. Another guy they've really been pushing for, one that I kind of assumed weeks ago that Tennessee probably wouldn't get, but with his reaction on social media to different stuff, and obviously, kids react to social media about stuff all the time, it doesn't mean anything. But with how hard Tennessee's commits are peer recruiting him, I wonder, and with who has committed to Tennessee now with Dillon Brooks and whatnot, I wonder if Tennessee's made up some more ground with Amarius Mims. To me, that five-star tackle, I'd pretty much kind of written off as Tennessee's going to try, but I don't think they're going to get. I almost wonder now if all this momentum has made him kind of do a double take and kind of reconsider, say, hey, maybe Tennessee is a good spot for me to go to. Maybe I should consider them more. What are your thoughts on Mims?
Man, at the beginning of the month, I had a conversation with Matt and a couple of guys in our thread, and my words were, man, I really kind of wish Tennessee would stop wasting their time on Mims. He's going to Georgia, and I just don't think there's any way they're going to get him. Mm-hmm. Owning that, those were my words. I didn't think there was any chance there. I thought Mims to Georgia was a done deal. I sit here just about 30 days later, and I'm going, Tennessee might pull this off. They have recruited Mims as a staff hard. Again, this is another guy they've been involved with for a long time. They have really, really pushed for him. They have made him a priority. He's a big, big, big target that they want bad. They're in a pretty solid place, and I just felt like it was probably a done deal to Georgia. We've seen Tennessee do this with a few guys in the last couple of years. You see it with a lot of schools every year. You have one or two of these really highly rated guys. You chase them, you do everything you can. It just doesn't quite pan out. I really felt like Mims was probably going to Georgia, and he still might. But boy, Tennessee has made it more interesting, and they have made it a lot harder on Kirby Smart and Matt Luke and the Bulldogs. You look at what Tennessee's got right now, especially if they get Cody Brown. Mims and Cody Brown are close. Those guys are close. They're good friends. He knows Kamar well. Apparently knows Brooks well as well. And again, to no one's surprise, Harrison Bailey's been all over him too. Mm-hmm. But he got several of these guys in this 2020 class that he is very close with, and that he knows well, and that he likes. If Tennessee were to land Cody Brown along with Wilcoxson and along with Brooks, and I think this is also, we talked about it the last time we were on, those five-star guys, those really elite guys, they take notice when one another commits somewhere. They take that carries weight. When those really elite guys like Brooks and Mims make a decision, it impacts the others. The others take notice. I think Brooks committing to Tennessee might have had that kind of impact on Mims. I think the kind of guys that Tennessee's pulling in right now, I think the kind of guys Tennessee's pulling in, guys that are close to him, the amount of peer recruiting he's getting, and let's be frank here too. With Sam Pittman, now the head coach at the University of Arkansas, name me a better offensive line coach, head and shoulders, clearly a better offensive line coach than Will Friend.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could make a case, we'll have to see what he does as a position coach, but you can make a case that Matt Luke is. But again, we said this when he first got hired over there. I think he's just using this as a chance to be the O-line coach for a year, maybe 2 at the most, then go get another head coaching job somewhere else. So, or some other job, something like that.
I think there's a good chance of that, and I'm not dragging on Matt Luke. I think Matt Luke is a really good offensive line coach. I think he's a good recruiter, but I'm not willing to say he's head and shoulders above Will Friend. Will Friend is among the best offensive line coaches in the country, and I know he didn't have I know he's not had anybody really drafted from Tennessee yet, but look at where this line was and what he had to work with the day he got here. And going into this, what's going to be the what's going to be the 3rd year.
Yeah.
Tennessee on paper may have the best offensive line in the country.
At least in the SEC, and if you have the best line in the SEC, you probably have the best line in the country, that's for sure.
And a lot of that is due to the recruiting that Will Friend has done and the development that Will Friend has done. Mm-hmm. This offensive line took huge steps forward last year with 2 true freshman offensive tackles. There is no position in college football that benefits more from a redshirt year than the offensive lineman, especially in a conference like the SEC. Just because you get a year bigger and a year stronger physically, to have Wanye Morris and Darnell Wright come in and play the way they did as true freshmen at both tackle spots, and that line to take the steps forward that it did, that says an enormous amount about what Will Friend has done. You have watched the progression of Jerome Carvin. You've watched the progression of Jameer Johnson, especially after they have found a spot for him. You got to see Brandon Kennedy last year after he had been hurt, and you watched him grow as the season went on and really look dominant at times. Kennedy, you'll have a hard time convincing me there's a better center in the SEC coming back this year. And then Trey Smith is going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft if things go the way that they look like they're going to go for Trey after everything that he's been through. It's going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. Oh, by the way, throw Cade Mays in there. So if you're Tennessee, you're going, yeah, we haven't had anybody really drafted yet. We've not had our full program come through yet. Next year is when that starts. But look at the grades on our guys. Look at the development they've had. Look at what this line looks like, and look at what it can be going forward. I think that's a big selling point for Tennessee to Mims. And then you have the peer recruiting. Then you have the guys that he's close to. Then you have that he's been a priority for a long time. That's one that Tennessee made a month ago. I thought there was absolutely no chance, and my words were they were wasting their time. And I'm looking at it now going, they might pull this off.
Yeah, I'm not willing to pull the trigger yet. I still think Georgia is the team to beat there, but I'm with you. Like I just said, a month ago, a few weeks ago, I thought they're wasting their time with Mims too. I thought that was just one they're going to keep going along. It'd be cool that Tennessee's in the top group for one of the top linemen in the country, but they weren't going to get him. Now the chances are better. I'm still not willing to say Tennessee's in the lead there, obviously, and there's still plenty of time in his recruitment. He's not committing anytime soon. At least I don't think so. And Georgia is definitely not letting him go very easily. But Tennessee, it looks like they're in a better position there. It looks like they're in a better position with a lot of kids. Trinity Bell, Caden Salter, Cody Brown. I mean, there's a few other guys we haven't even named that Tennessee seems to be doing really well with behind the scenes here that you and I were talking about before we hit record. So give that little teaser for you guys listening there. But I think that'll be where we end this podcast. Brandon will maybe have another podcast later this week. It just depends on what Tennessee does, who decides to commit, who doesn't, or what happens. But we'll at least definitely have one, I'll say, next week probably, and then definitely around May 10th or so, I'd say we'll do one, because I have a feeling Tennessee is going to add Caden Salter. But maybe I'm wrong, and things could change in 11 days or so between now and then. But I feel good about Tennessee's chances with him as of right now. But Brandon, before I go, what do y'all have on VR2? I know you've been doing interviews. I think you got an interview with Nixon and Wilcoxson both. What all do you guys have on VR2?
Yeah, take a look at us over at si.com/college/Tennessee. We haven't been able to get an interview with Dillon Brooks yet. We do have interviews up with both Julian Nixon and Kamar Wilcoxson. We have analysis pieces up on all of these new recruits, these new commitments, rather. We have our instant reaction videos. I think Matt and I are probably going to get on and talk a little bit soon about what has sparked this huge turn and this huge explosion in Tennessee's recruiting, jumping from 17th on Sunday morning to 5th on Tuesday afternoon in the nation. So we're trying to stay on top of everything there. as if any more recruiting news breaks, you know that we're going to be there. We're going to have the analysis. We're going to try to pull the interviews for you. We're going to try to stay on top of things, but we're also trying to keep tabs on all of Tennessee sports. So we talked about Yves Pons declaring for the NBA draft. We've also had news on some former Vols like Dustin Colquitt today, calling it a career with the Chiefs. Although I'm not sure that just means the Chiefs just don't plan on punting anymore. But follow us, everything Tennessee related. We do our very best to stay on top of everything for you. So proud of our staff. Love what we're getting to do, and excited because it's starting to sound like football and sports may be coming back a little bit and ramping up a little. It just gets you excited.
Absolutely. This has been a fun past 5 days with Tennessee getting guys drafted, with baseball getting a grad transfer from ETSU as well, and then, of course, Tennessee getting some big-time news in recruiting and football. I imagine basketball is going to have, they signed a couple 5-stars and 4-star Corey Walker. I think Kennedy Chandler is going to be cutting his list soon. Tennessee basketball and Tennessee football are starting to try to fight to see who can get the most 5-stars in a class. So that's always fun when you have two programs recruiting at an elite level. And the elite Vols have done a good job recruiting. They just got a girl from Spain to commit she's a very versatile 6'2" forward guard who I think brings a lot of interesting stuff to the table. And they also got a grad transfer for their team for next season, just like the men did with Anasicki. So a lot of good news for Tennessee athletics right now. Very exciting time to be a Vol fan, and hopefully that can all translate to once we get into fall and we get some football. They are, again, as Brandon Martin at VR2. We are RockyTopInsider.com as well. Check everything out on our social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course YouTube is where a lot of you are listening to this podcast currently. We appreciate you all listening in again. And until next time, this has been another episode of the RTI Recruiting Podcast.